Marcus Williams woke up before sunrise, his heart racing with excitement. Today was the day he would fly alone for the very first time. He had packed his small suitcase the night before with care, a favorite book, a warm hoodie, and his lucky baseball cap. His mother had pressed a travel journal into his hands, encouraging him to write down every detail. "You're ready for this?" she said, smiling as she helped him zip up his bag. Marcus felt a flutter of pride. He was 16 years old, and this trip to visit his aunt in Seattle felt like the first step into a bigger world. At the airport, bright lights glowed over polished floors. Marcus held his boarding pass tightly as he walked beside his father, who spoke quietly about safety rules and gate numbers. They passed by shops selling coffee, travel pillows, and magazines. Marcus's eyes widened at the colorful displays, but he kept his focus on the gate. He felt a swell of independence when his dad gave him a quick hug and pointed him forward. "Go show them you've got this," his father said. Marcus nodded and headed toward the gate, determined to prove he could manage the journey on his own. Inside the boarding area, chairs lined up in neat rows. Passengers chatted, checked their phones, or sipped on drinks. Marcus found his seat number on the big screen, 23A. He followed the signs to the jet bridge, where the flight attendant smiled and scanned his boarding pass. The cabin smelled clean, with a faint hint of fresh coffee. Out before him, each marked with tiny numbers on the armrests. Marcus took a deep breath and found 23A, an aisle seat beside the window. He slid into the seat, buckled his seatbelt, and looked around for any sign of trouble. Most of the flight attendants greeted passengers warmly as they boarded. A kind woman handed out earphones. Another offered help to an elderly man with his carry-on bag. When Sarah Mitchell, the lead flight attendant, reached Marcus, her greeting felt different. She was dressed in a crisp uniform, her hair tied back neatly. Instead of the friendly tone she used with others, she looked at Marcus with cool eyes. She checked his seat assignment, then her lips pressed into a thin line. Marcus waited for her to say welcome aboard, but instead she cleared her throat and said, "You need to get up." Marcus's stomach tightened. He stood up politely. "Is there a problem?" he asked softly. Sarah pointed down the aisle to a seat closer. "To the front. A passenger paid extra to sit here," she said.
"Oh."
"Give him your seat." Her voice was firm, leaving no room for discussion. A few other passengers paused, glancing at Marcus and then at Sarah. The cabin felt suddenly smaller, heavier, as if everyone held their breath. Marcus shook his head. "But this is my seat," he replied. His voice was steady but calm. He had looked at his boarding pass, and it clearly said to 3A, no one had needed to change seats before. He tried to show her the paper ticket, but Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "That doesn't matter," she said. "He paid more. Now move." Marcus swallowed. Could feel every gaze on him, some curious, some sympathetic. He wondered if the seat really mattered that much, but he also knew it was about more than just a chair on a plane. A woman in the row behind leaned forward and asked, "What's going on?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "Nothing for you to worry about," she snapped. The woman settled back, uncertain. Marcus glanced at the window and saw the runway lights blinking. He imagined the engines roaring to life, the plane lifting gently into the night sky. He did not want to cause a scene, but he also did not want to give in to unfairness. He took a steadying breath and met Sarah's eyes. "I'm not moving," he said softly, but firmly. "This seat is mine." Sarah's expression hardened. She folded her arms and stared at him. Marcus felt a pang of fear, but he stayed in his seat. Other passengers murmured among themselves. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious. No one moved to intervene, but a few offered Marcus encouraging nods. He pressed his lips together and kept his gaze straight ahead. He fumbled in his bag for his phone, preparing to document what he knew was wrong. As he opened the phone's camera, Sarah replaced her clipboard in her pocket and leaned in close. "You're causing trouble," she whispered. "You think you're clever, recording me? Stop that now, or I'll make you regret it." Were low but sharp, the threat hung in the air. Marcus's hand trembled slightly as he looked at her shadowed face. He remembered his father's words. "Stay calm, speak clearly." placed the phone on the armrest so it pointed toward Sarah. Then he pressed record. His heart thudded, but his voice stayed steady. "I'm just showing what's happening," he said. "I have the right to my assigned seat. I'd like an apology." Sarah straightened and stepped back, crossing her arms. Marcus could hear the slight rustle of her uniform as she shifted. Other flight attendants gathered near the front, whispering into their radios. The woman who had asked earlier now watched with concern. A quiet man in a suit looked at Marcus and gave a small thumbs up. The tension in the cabin grew, crackling like static electricity. Marcus's palms were damp, but he did not look away. He drew strength from the support he felt, even if it was unspoken. Moments later, a voice came over the intercom. It was the pilot, sounding calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I understand there is an issue with the seat assignment. We will resolve this quickly, so please remain in your seats and keep your seatbelts fastened." Marcus felt relief at hearing the pilot's voice. He tapped the record button a second time. To make sure he captured everything, cabin lights seemed a bit brighter, now that an authority figure had acknowledged the situation. Sarah shot a glance toward the cockpit door. Her jaw clenched. Marcus watched as she pressed a button on her wrist, possibly to call the gate agent. He looked around at the other passengers, some fanning themselves, others checking their watches. One young girl gripped the armrest wide-eyed. Marcus offered her a small, reassuring smile. He reminded himself that he was doing the right thing. He had done nothing wrong. He was standing up not just for his seat, but for his dignity. As the flight attendant spoke quietly into her hidden microphone. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of his mother saying how proud she would be of him. He thought of his little sister's grin when she heard he was on a plane. He felt a wave of calm wash over him. When he opened his eyes, he was ready for whatever would happen next. The engines hummed softly under the floor, as if waiting for permission to roar. Marcus straightened in his seat, chin up, determined to see this through. He would not let fear push him out of his place. He sat quietly, hands folded, waiting. For the story to unfold? Marcus waited, his pulse steady, but his mind racing, as the cabin filled with a tense hush. Sarah, the lead flight attendant, stood before him, arms crossed like a guard at a gate. Her crisp uniform seemed to bristle with authority as she tapped. Her foot and glanced at the cockpit door. No one moved. It felt as if time slowed, holding its breath with every passenger in the plane. Then she spoke again. Her voice low but firm. "You will move, or I will report you for insubordination." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus felt a flicker of anger, but he held it back, took a slow breath, remembering his mother's gentle advice. "Stay calm, explain yourself." "I'm not insubordinate," he said quietly. "I have the right to my assigned seat. My boarding pass shows 23A here." He extended his hand with the paper ticket. Sarah glanced at the pass and then at Marcus's face, her eyes narrowing. She must have realized she couldn't rely solely on fear to win. She straightened her posture. "Fine," she said curtly. "I'll get the gate agent." She stormed off down the aisle, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. As she left, a ripple of murmurs went through the passengers. A middle-aged man in a plaid shirt leaned to his wife and whispered, "He's right. They can't just kick him out of his seat." An older woman swallowed hard and clutched her purse. Another passenger, a business traveler with a laptop bag on his lap, closed his screen and looked up. Marcus felt a warmth of solidarity from the crowd. He settled back into his seat and noticed how the tension in his shoulders had eased a bit. He pulled his travel journal from his bag, flipping through blank pages, but he couldn't write yet. His mind buzzed with thoughts. Sarah returned a moment later, followed by James, the gate agent, and the pilot's first officer, Captain Erickson. James looked nervous, adjusting his shiny badge and clearing his throat.
Captain Erickson's uniform
Was crisp, and he carried himself with quiet confidence. "What's happening here?" James asked, his voice polite but firm. Sarah explained in clipped tones. "This passenger paid an extra fee for seat 23A. He must have it." Marcus held up his boarding pass. "I paid the same fare as everyone else. Number 1 offered me extra money for my seat. Someone did. They did it after I boarded. I was here first." James frowned. He checked his handheld device and swiped through a digital manifest. His name is on the manifest 4 to 3A, he said to Sarah. There's no record of an upgraded seat purchase. Sarah's cheeks flushed slightly. It's obvious the other passenger needs it. She shot up the aisle. A passenger near the front, Mr. Chen, an elderly man with a cane, looked confused and stood up. Excuse me, did I miss something? He asked. James replied, Sir, they are sorting out a seat assignment issue. Please remain seated. Mr. Chen nodded, slowly, and sat back. He glanced toward Marcus and offered him a small, encouraging smile.
8.
Marcus returned it gratefully. Captain Erickson stepped forward. His calm voice filled the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this delay. We have a seat assignment discrepancy that we need to resolve. Please bear with us a moment. He turned to Sarah. Is there evidence of a seat upgrade, Ms. Mitchell? Sarah hesitated, then shook her head. No, Captain. I assumed. She looked uncomfortable. Marcus felt a surge of relief at Captain Erickson's words. Still, he knew the challenge wasn't over. Sarah looked at Marcus, her eyes hard, but she said, Nothing. The captain raised his hand gently to quiet the passengers. It appears that no one paid extra for the seat. Mr. Williams has the correct assignment. We will proceed as planned. If there is any issue with seat preferences in the future, we will ensure it is handled before boarding. A ripple of applause. And murmurs of agreement spread through the cabin. Marcus was surprised by how much impact a few words could have. Sarah settled behind him, her expression unreadable. Marcus tucked his journal away. He felt his phone buzz in his pocket. It was a text from his aunt. Hope your flight is smooth. Calls when you land. He smiled softly. He tapped out a quick reply. Made it aboard. See you soon. Minutes passed. The flight attendants resumed their duties, preparing for takeoff. Sarah moved to the front, speaking quietly with another attendant. Marcus watched respectfully. He did not want to gloat. He understood she was doing her job in a tense moment. He hoped she would learn from it. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Soon, the engines would roar, and the plane would lift him into the sky. He felt a thrill of anticipation. This trip was special, and he would not let one person's mistake ruin it. He looked around at the cabin once more. The mother and her child were now reading a picture book. The businessman was checking his laptop. Mr. Chen was quietly humming a tune. The plane felt like a small community. Bound by shared sky and destination, Marcus's mind wandered 2 stories he had read about teens standing up for justice. He thought of Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat on a bus decades ago. His own small way, he had made a stand. He wondered if future passengers would remember this moment as he would. A flight attendant brought him a small bottle of water and a snack. Sorry for the wait, she said. Marcus nodded and smiled. It's okay, thank you. He unwrapped the snack and took a bite of the sweet cookie, savoring the moment. The captain's voice came on again. We are cleared for takeoff. Please turn off any electronic devices or switch them to airplane mode. Marcus turned off his phone and glanced at his journal. He decided he would write down every feeling and every detail of this journey. It was important. As the plane began to taxi, Marcus felt the rumble beneath his seat. He pressed his seatbelt buckle. The engine spooled up louder and louder, and the plane sped down the runway. Hard in his throat, Marcus gripped the armrests. As the plane lifted into the night sky, he glanced once more at the flight attendant station behind him. Sarah watched him, her face softer than before. She gave a small nod. Marcus nodded back. It was a gesture of understanding and respect. He settled back, looking out the window into the darkness. The city lights shrank and twinkled as the plane climbed higher. Marcus felt proud and calm. He knew this trip would be one he'd never forget. And as the world below turned into a patchwork of lights, Marcus closed his eyes and let himself imagine all the stories ahead of him on this journey. Marcus settled into the flight, feeling the steady hum of engines beneath him. He watched the stars through the small oval window. The lights of the cabin were soft, and passengers around him were reading, sleeping, or watching screens. It should have been an ordinary flight, but Marcus knew he would never forget these hours. He pulled out his travel journal, the pages still blank. He flipped to a clean sheet and began to write, "I felt scared but proud today. Stood up for myself. People helped me feel safe." Paused and let the words settle. He wanted to remember every detail of this night. He closed the journal and tucked it into his hoodie pocket. A flight attendant passed by, offering drinks. Marcus asked for juice. She offered him a small cup and smiled kindly. He thanked her. He thought about how different her tone was from Sarah's earlier coldness. It reminded him that kindness could come from a simple act. He looked around and noticed the young girl with the picture book. She was asleep, clutching her teddy bear. He remembered when he was her age, taking long flights with his family. He missed his sister. He hoped to see her soon and tell her all about this trip. Suddenly the lights dimmed further. An announcement came. "We will begin our meal service shortly. Please raise your seat backs and tray tables." Marcus clicked his tray table down and waited. An attendant rolled a cart down the aisle, carrying boxes and trays. He chose the chicken pasta. The attendant carefully placed it on his tray and handed him a small packet of crackers. As Marcus ate, he reflected on the earlier scene. He remembered Sarah's harsh words and how he felt when he refused. He thought about Rosa Parks again, and how one person's refusal changed history. He felt a kinship with her. He realized that standing up for fairness was important, no matter how small the stage. A man across the aisle, Mr. Chen, spoke softly to the attendant in his native language. Marcus heard bits of it but didn't understand. Later, Mr. Chen turned to Marcus and smiled. "Thank you," he said. "You were very brave." Marcus nodded. "Thank you," he replied. "I just did what felt right." Mr. Chen patted Marcus's shoulder. "You remind me of my grandson. He would be proud of you." Marcus felt a warm glow at the kind words. He realized that bravery wasn't just for heroes in books. It was for everyday people, too. After dinner, Marcus opened his journal again, wrote down Mr. Chen's words and how the other passengers had quietly supported him. He sketched the layout of the cabin, and the faces he remembered, felt calmer with each line. Then Marcus heard a soft knock at his seat. He looked up to see Sarah standing there, holding a folded piece of paper. Her expression was serious, but not hostile. "Here," she said quietly, handing it to him. Marcus took the note and opened it. It read, "I'm sorry for how I acted. I was wrong." It was written in neat handwriting and signed, "Sarah." Marcus's heart lifted. Looked at Sarah, who met his eyes and nodded once before walking away. He stared at the note. His chest felt light. He hoped she had really learned something from this. He wrote in his journal, "Apology means a lot. People can change." Soon after, the lights clicked off and a hush fell over the cabin. Marcus leaned back, closing his eyes. He thought of his mother's gentle voice and his father's supportive words. He felt grateful for their guidance. He felt proud of his own strength. He drifted into a light sleep, dreaming of Seattle's rain and his aunt's warm house. In his dream, he walked down a quiet street lined with tall trees. The rain dripped from the leaves as he held his aunt's hand. He felt safe. A soft chime woke him moments later. He opened his eyes and saw the pilot's voice overhead. "Good evening, passengers. We are beginning our descent into Seattle. Please return your tray tables and take your seats." Marcus clicked his seatbelt back and sat upright. He looked around. As other passengers stowed their belongings, the cabin lights brightened slightly. He reached into his pocket and held Sarah's note, feeling its weight. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. He was ready for the next part of his journey. He had faced fear, stood his ground, and even seen an apology. Now, he was about to land in a new city, ready for whatever came next. As the plane descended, Marcus felt excitement bubble inside him. His thoughts turned to his aunt's house, her warm kitchen, and the stories they would share. He smiled softly, ready for the next chapter. The wheels of the plane touched the runway with a gentle jolt, and a soft cheer rose from the cabin. Marcus felt a thrill as the engines powered down. He looked around excited and a bit nervous. This was his first time in Seattle. Passengers gathered their belongings, chatting softly about the city lights and the weather outside. Marcus slid out of his seat, careful not to snag his journal. He had written so much notes about courage, kindness, and the promise of adventure. He tucked his phone and journal back into his bag and headed toward the front of the plane. As he reached the aisle, Sarah stood there with a stack of apology notes in her hand. Her face was softer now, and her eyes held a look of genuine regret. Approached Marcus shyly. "I wanted to say it again in person," she said quietly, handing him another note. It read, "I'm sorry for my actions earlier. I will do better." Marcus nodded. "Thank you," he replied. "I forgive you." She smiled, a small, hopeful curve of her lips, and turned to leave. Stepping onto the jetway, Marcus felt the cool night air brush his face. He pulled his hoodie tighter and looked up at the sky filled with distant stars. He felt like a different person than he had a few hours ago. He had faced fear and come out stronger. At the jetway exit, Marcus saw his Aunt Clara waving excitedly. She wore a bright yellow coat and held a small sign with his name in bold letters. "Marcus," she called, opening her arms. He ran to her and hugged her tight. She smelled like cinnamon and coffee. "Welcome to Seattle, my brave boy," she whispered. They walked toward the terminal, their steps echoing softly. Marcus's heart pounded with excitement. Clara chattered about the rain that had passed earlier and how clear the night was now. They navigated the crowds, people rushing to catch connections, families greeting loved ones, and workers pushing. Carts dot outside. Clara's car was parked under a row of bright lights. Marcus admired the tall trees lining the lot. The air smelled fresh like pine. Inside the car, she handed him a warm cup of cocoa from her travel mug. He sipped it slowly, savoring the sweetness, as they drove through Seattle's quiet streets. Marcus looked out the window at the city skyline. Tall buildings lit up against the night sky. He noticed the Space Needle glowing in the distance. Clara pointed it out. "We'll go there tomorrow," she said. "I've got breakfast plans." Marcus grinned, feeling his adventure truly beginning. Arriving at Clara's house, a cozy cottage with soft lights glowing through the windows, Marcus felt a wave of comfort wash over him. He stepped inside to the scent of baked apples. The living room was warm, with a crackling fire in the hearth. Clara ushered him in. "Make yourself at home," she said. He placed his bag by the door and took off his shoes. Clara led him to a chair by the fire and handed him a plate with warm cookies. "Tell me everything," she said. Marcus smiled and began to recount his journey, the boarding, the dispute, the apology, and the takeoff. Clara listened, her eyes bright with pride. He described Sarah's cold tone and how he felt when he stood his ground. He told Clara about the support from the passengers, Captain Erickson's intervention, and finally Sarah's apology. Clara nodded, leaning forward. "You did the right thing," she said. "Standing up for fairness matters, no matter where you are." Marcus felt a warm glow. They talked late into the night, sipping cocoa and eating cookies. Marcus took out his journal and read snippets of his writing. Clara smiled at his words. "One day people will read this and learn from you," she said. Softly, eventually Marcus felt his eyelids grow heavy. Clara showed him to the guest room down the hall. The bed was covered with a soft blanket and a plump pillow. She turned on a small lamp. "Sleep well, Marcus," she said, tucking the blanket around him. "Tomorrow is full of new adventures." Marcus lay there, his mind replaying the night's events. He felt proud of himself, knowing he had made a difference. He closed his eyes, listening to the soft hum of the house and the distant sound of raindrops. He thought about how a single seat on a plane had turned into a lesson about respect and courage as he drifted to sleep. Marcus dreamed of the Space Needle glowing under a rainbow. He saw himself standing at the top, looking over the world, confident and brave. He knew this stay with his aunt would be the start of many more courageous moments to come. Morning light filtered through the curtains, painting soft stripes on the carpet. Marcus stirred awake, stretching beneath the cozy blanket. He sat up and looked around the bright guest room. The scent of coffee and toast drifted in from the kitchen. He smiled, remembering last night's events and feeling a warm sense of safety. He slipped out of bed and walked down the hallway toward the kitchen. The wooden floor creaked under his feet. Clara stood by the counter, humming as she buttered bread. A rabbit-shaped mug of steaming coffee sat next to a plate of toast and scrambled eggs. Marcus's mouth watered.
Good morning, my brave traveler.
Clara said, turning with a smile. I hope you slept well. She had a soft glow in her eyes, proud and gentle. I did, Aunt Clara. Thank you for having me, Marcus replied, pouring juice into a glass. They sat at the small table by the window. Outside, colorful flowers bloomed in pots on the sill. Clara asked about his flight again, and Marcus shared thoughts he had added to his journal overnight. He spoke of courage, respect, and how small actions can lead to big changes. Clara listened, nodding and wiping a tear from her eye. After breakfast, Clara handed Marcus a folded map of Seattle. We're going to the Space Needle, Pike Place Market. In the museum today, she said. But first, I have somewhere special in mind. She led Marcus to the car, where a sign in the back seat said, Proud of you. In bright letters as they drove through the quiet morning streets, Marcus felt excitement. The city was waking up street cleaners, sweeping sidewalks, cafes preparing for customers, and joggers waving as they passed. Clara pointed out local landmarks in old brick, buildings with vivid murals. They arrived at a small community center with a bright mural of children playing. Clara parked and led Marcus inside. The room was filled with local teens and adults, gathered in a circle. At the center stood a man with a warm smile. Marcus, Clara said, This is Mr. Ortiz, the community leader. He invited you here to share your story. Marcus felt his heart quicken. He had not expected to speak today. Mr. Ortiz approached and extended his hand. Welcome, Marcus. We've heard about what you did on the plane. Your courage inspired us all. Would you like to say a few words? Marcus swallowed. The faces in the circle looked kind and encouraging. He nodded and took a step forward. In a clear voice, he said, I didn't think I was doing something big. I just knew it felt wrong when I was asked to move from my seat without reason. I remembered that fairness matters, spoke up, and people listened. That gave me hope. Room was silent, then filled with applause. Some teens clapped, and a few held up their phones to record. Marcus felt a surge of pride. Mr. Ortiz handed him a small certificate that read Community Courage Award. Marcus held it gently, amazed. After the gathering, Clara and Marcus walked to a nearby cafe. They sat on a small patio under a striped awning. Marcus sipped hot chocolate while Clara ordered pastries. I'm so proud of you, Clara said. You've shown this city what one person can do. Marcus smiled. I just did what I thought was right, he said. Thinking back to Sarah's apology and the pilot's support, the rest of the day was a blur of joy. They took an elevator to the top of the Space Needle, looking out over the city's spread of buildings and water. At Pike Place Market, Marcus sampled fresh fruit and watched fish fly between sellers. He laughed with Clara as they found a small bookstore full of old maps and journals. By evening, Marcus felt fulfilled, yet tired. Cottage where neighbors had gathered for a small dinner to welcome him. They shared stories, laughter, and homemade pie. As the night deepened, Marcus sat on the porch swing with Clara. He held his journal and looked at the sky. Fireflies flickered in the garden below. This trip was more than just a visit, Clara said softly. It's a reminder that courage and kindness can change the world. Marcus nodded, closing his journal. No, I'll keep writing and sharing. I want others to feel they can stand up too. Clara squeezed his hand, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way. Marcus leaned back, gazing at the stars. He thought of everyone on the flight, the passengers who stood by him, the pilot who listened, and even Sarah who learned to apologize. He felt hope for the future. He opened his journal and wrote one final line. Every voice matters. Every action counts. Then he closed the book and let the night's peace fill him. In the soft glow of the porch light, Marcus knew this was only the beginning of his journey. Courage in his heart and stories to tell, he was ready to take on whatever came next.